And welcome to the Penfield Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. Today is March 10th, 6 o'clock. Calling this meeting to order. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None here.
None?
Nope.
Okay. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from last week. Everybody had a chance to review those, and Don updated those a couple times. So we're good with that?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay. We'll go to discussion. First thing is Penfield Forward tomorrow's spaces.
Yep, so I just wanted to reference, we have the flyer up here for everybody to see. We, as the town of Penfield, are exploring future needs at various town facilities, including but not limited to the library, rec department, town hall, town court, and really all town facilities to get as much community feedback as possible. So that QR code that you see there, people can use to access the website. If you're not able to access the QR code, I did just want to bring up that if you go to the town's website, which is penfieldny.gov, right on our homepage, this Penfield Forward will click you right to here. And we have a video that PCTV did from our first community workshop on March 2nd at the community center. And then also this very important Take the Survey Town Spaces community feedback, where we want as much as the community and recreation program, library users, town hall users to go in there and provide as much feedback as possible on current facilities and then future wants, needs, and things like that. That is going to be open until the end of this month. So I know all of our different departments are sending out emails connecting to the survey. We also have display boards here at the town hall and over at the community center, one specifically in the library, one near the rec department, and then one just in the main entrance area. So a bunch of different ways to provide feedback. And, you know, speaking from the recreation department, you know, when we did the Parks and Rec master plan, we were so thrilled with the amount of feedback that we got. That's only going to help us in the town make decisions moving forward. And a lot of these bigger ticket items, you know, it could be 5-10 years down the line. So all the feedback we can get is great for us to make decisions.
Great.
So I missed I unfortunately missed that open house. What's the overall goal of the project? I mean, what's the outcome at the end?
I think a lot of it's just gathering ideas from the public and figuring out like kind of what direction we want to go in with public feedback as far as a pool, new, and it's all opinion based. It's all pool, library, rec center, anything that is included in this.
Yeah, I think I said it before at the last meeting, but I feel like all of our different departments throughout the town, you know, library, rec department through the Parks and Rec master plan, we've all kind of had different studies or surveys out there about our facilities specifically.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Some being in master plans for years, you know, speaking for the rec department about, you know, just a paragraph in there saying, hey, we need a new rec center. Through our last Parks and Rec master plan, we really dove into it a little bit more to look at, hey, what this could be. And I think the town's looking at it as, oh, all of these different things are coming up. Let's collectively as a whole look at, we have all of these maybe wants and needs. Let's get some feedback on what's feasible for the future. So
It was interesting to see the amount of people that were the stakeholders that were there that knew about the library one. They knew about the Parks and Rec, but they didn't know about the other one.
Yeah.
So it's good to get everybody together on one page.
yeah, because of course there's the town hall, this building that we're currently sitting in, there's town courts as well, and then just all our other town facilities, you know, Little League, athletic fields, things like that, where a bunch of feedback's been heard, but I think this is really the town looking collectively and holistically at
Get it
everything
all in
all at
one
once, because
holistic.
of course there's going to be fees attached to all of these things, and you know, listening to the community and what they want will help make hopefully good decisions in the future.
Okay, so then drive some decision-making on the board, and how to fund, prioritize, et cetera. Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that video, I didn't watch that video, but I was there, and I know some of us were also there too, so that should be pretty much everything they did.
Okay.
So it's
Good.
pretty inclusive.
The survey is very well done as well, gives a lot of opportunity to just easily select numbers and values that are appropriate for your concern, but also the ability to really provide your own specific feedback, which I think is super helpful for the town. So I'd urge everybody to do the survey.
So I did have a quick question. I don't know if you guys are the right people. You probably aren't, but to ask this of, but we'll take a shot at it anyway. So the rec center has the library and the
Town
rec
court,
department
right.
and the town courts
Yes.
in it. And I heard everybody needs more space. Has anybody looked at what that space would be best suited for expansion? I mean, if the rec department was someplace else and the library could expand into it, are they okay with that? Or is it, vice versa, the rec department would expand into that space better?
I think that all of that stuff is what this project is looking
Is
at.
trying to
where,
get at.
when we did I can speak for the Parks and Rec Master Plan, when we looked at it, currently we reside in 8,000 square feet of that building. And I think the library is right around 25,000 square feet. We, through the Parks and Rec Master Plan, looked at a lot of other municipalities around, what they had. We listened to the public about what they wanted in terms of, a lot of it was multi-use space, larger gym, more pickleball courts, theater programs, dance studio, senior center space, kitchen space. We didn't feel like even in the current community center, that would be kind of enough space for where that is. Doesn't mean that it couldn't be expanded, but the Parks and Rec Master Plan Committee looked at potentially a new rec center just because I think of the size.
Yeah.
Comparable to other places. For the library, I know that it was mentioned at the meeting that they've looked at other libraries around. I can't speak to if the community center is enough space for them and their current wants and needs with the building, but that's really one of the bigger focuses for this project moving forward. Of, hey, we have all these needs. What works, what doesn't work, what's feasible, and then at the end of the day,
And we have
how
a
does this
building
affect?
that, I mean, they were talking about going up a second story on, expanding if possible, but if the library gets a new space and the rec center gets a new space, the courts certainly don't need all that room. Do we end up tearing the building down? I guess that's what they're trying
Yeah.
to get at also. Okay.
Yeah, bunch of options, but hopefully feedback will help steer possible decisions in the future.
And like Andrew said, like Penfield Library also has a plan that they put together, so I'm sure it's wants and needs what they want. So if you reference that, you can look, and I think that'll help you make the survey much more effective to
Totally.
understand what their needs are going forward.
Yeah, and again, that's where all of our different departments have kind of done and heard these things throughout the years from the community, knowing we're in an older building and have some space constraints. And, we were so connected with the library and kind of updated them through our Parks and Rec Master Plan just on what we were looking at. And there's a letter in our Parks and Rec Master Plan just that included the library and their thoughts on the building and things like that. So I highly recommend checking out our Parks and Rec Master Plan that's on our website. But at the end of the day, the recreation and library, we're services, we're programs, we're events, we're things like that that the community go and see. Town hall, town court, that's more come in, have a use, do those things. So I think that's also why all this needs to come together to look at, what's the community want and need. And hopefully we can do a bunch of things together in the future.
Okay, next item on their agenda is the Penfield Trails Committee update. So I'll turn that over to Don, as
Yep,
always.
Yep, thanks, Bill. So we have not had a guided hike given the schedule. In February, we did ours a little early, so there hasn't been one since our last meeting. Our next hike is this coming Saturday, and we're at the Whiting Road Nature Preserve in Webster. So we do, the vast majority of our hikes, monthly hikes, are within Penfield, but we do one or two a year outside of Penfield. Whiting Road is a really nice, extensive network of shared use trails. So I hiked it yesterday. I was worried about mud or snow or lingering ice, but it's actually in really good condition. I know there's some rain coming still, but there's a, like I said, a wide variety of terrain. It can be flat, it can be hilly, so we can adjust our hike based on the conditions. So be encouraged to have people join us. It's a really nice park that not everyone knows about. And then April, and then we're hard into spring. So April is Thousand Acre Swamp, which is one of my favorite hikes of the year with all the emerging wildflowers and, spring things. So a couple good hikes coming the next month.
Great. Next item on the agenda is the Trails Map update.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. So we have a PowerPoint presentation that we'll talk through. So, we'll start with, here's just an example. This is our Sherwood Fields. This is what one of the kiosks looks like today. Some of the maps are out of date, hard to read. They've been exposed to the sun. There's some new kiosks that don't have trail maps at all. So we were tasked, as the Trails Committee, and maybe you can go to the next slide, Andrew. We were tasked with coming up with sort of a standard look and feel for trail maps. It kind of dovetails with some work that was being done for the passport and for the website. We have a junior planner for the town, and that's been an initiative to update the trail maps across all of the different means that they're displayed. So we were asked as a Trails Committee to come up with a standard look and feel, something that would be common across all of them, even though each park is unique. Each kiosk is sized differently. Almost every one is sized differently. And, but also have it present, useful, clear information. So, we considered the fact that they are all unique, but we think we came up with something that's pretty good. And, we always, of course, consider costs, ongoing maintenance for the Parks Department, and, flexibility to adjust to changes as they come. So, just to scope what we're talking about, when you think about all the town parks, there really are kind of 6 that actually have hiking trails. So, what we're talking about here are the kiosks at those 6 parks that I have listed there. And a couple of them have more than one kiosk, different entrances. So we'll go through each of those. Next slide. All right, so we'll start. This is maybe our easiest example. This is 4 Mile Creek Nature Preserve. So this is a pretty small 22-acre, I think, park on Route 250 up towards Plank. It's, like I said, it's small. We have 3 loops. They're actually color-coded, red, green, and white. So, but there's no trail map currently in the kiosk. That's a picture of the kiosk there. It has currently things like, rules for the parks and, our guided hike flyers. So we came up with this design for this kiosk trail map based on looking at others in the area. And this is really sort of a hybrid between what the county does in theirs and what Webster does in theirs. And a lot of credit to our junior town planner. He's the one who really put this together. So you have obviously the colored loop to represent the trails that are in the park. The park itself is in green. We have a few examples that we'll get to where sections of the trail are actually outside of parks, so that was a little bit of a thing we had to account for. Each trail, he included a little map there, a little key in the upper left that shows the distance. That helps people at the trailhead understand the scope of the trails. But he also included distances on the trails themselves. I know it's too hard to read here. But that's also very helpful, right? When you're out hiking, and this is a really small park, but on the bigger hikes, you don't always know how far you are, how far things are, and what you want to take on before you get started. In the upper right corner, he kind of included a map of Penfield, so you have a little bit of a view into where you are within the town. And then the key at the bottom includes, relevant information, the shading to indicate it's a wetland area, whatever. And then you could also include things on there like lodges or pavilions, depending on the park. So, this is your first look. He has, I think, done a really nice job, and then each one you will see will be very similar to this. And then the proposed size on there shows the kiosk dimensions. That's 35 by 29, and then the trail map, sort of between a quarter and a half the size. So it's a compromise of leaving room for the other information and being readable for everybody.
So yeah, that trail size, or just for reference, the proposed trail map size, the 11 by 17, if you think of like a parking spot sign, that's about the same size as that. So that's a pretty good size going in that.
Yeah. And I think, he's got the ability to lay that out and then lay out some of the other information that we've agreed to as standard, presentation, and we can play with it. So I should say, this is the first pass at this, right? So we're looking for feedback, comments, observations, comments, et cetera. And then we'll take that back to him, we'll go through another revision, and then maybe more of a final presentation, unless people don't like it at all, and we'll start again.
I got two questions.
Absolutely.
What is in the box in the bottom? What is that used for?
The legend, you mean?
No, on
Oh.
the physical kiosk
And-
itself.
That kiosk, I think it's almost like a lost and found.
Okay.
We're looking at getting brochure holders for these, where you could have like the little flyers, or like the bookmarks that show the schedule of guided hikes for the whole year. And also, we have a trifold that shows all, map of Penfield and where all the parks are. So we'd like to get, for all of them, a brochure holder
Okay.
for that. So this is sort of a lost and found.
And then the other items that are on that, obviously I can't read those. What are those, and those standard on every trail?
Yeah, so we took that on also, I think, as an initiative last year with the Trails Committee to kind of define a standard. And so there's a carry-in, carry-out flyer there. There's park rules. There's a scenic hike flyer that we change every month. There's that little thing on the right is the bookmark that I mentioned. So that could come off and go in the brochure holder when we had that. I'm not sure what the text is.
I think that one has the security number on it.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and all that stuff
Yeah,
for this
numbers to
project.
call at night.
We'd standardize it.
I don't want to get too bogged down, but as we go through these, each one is different and they're different sizes. Some of them have information that's relevant to the park, like Channing Philbrook about the fish that you might find in the creek,
Right.
that type of stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so this is basically, the look and feel that we're looking to have.
Two questions also. With the size of the proposed trail map?
Yep.
Will you still be able to get all of the information that's currently posted on there, or are you
Well,
going to lose something?
We think so.
Okay.
I mean, there's a few things that you have to have. I think you have to have the park rules. I think we want to ensure we have room for the flyer for the hikes. This is actually one of the smaller kiosks. So, we may find a creative way to combine the rules and the carry-in, carry-out or something.
Yeah.
We can scale. So that's something that I think we'll play with before we go to print those.
And then on the map itself, am I seeing topography lines, topo lines?
No.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, it looks
yes,
like it.
he did. You're right. I'm sorry, he did. He
Yeah,
also
if
did a neat thing, it doesn't show real well, but because, to account for people who might be colorblind,
Okay.
he put different symbols inside the trail maps. So you can, if you look closely, like the green, you can kind of see it's blocked.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Each one of those, or the white, you can see it too. Each one of those has a little bit of a different pattern, which
Okay, to
I've never seen that on
differentiate
any other, mostly people just use a straight line on their trail maps. So I thought that was another thing that was pretty unique.
If you're going to include the topography lines, which I think is a great idea,
Right.
because, you want to know if you're going up a hill or, what the
Absolutely. Yep.
vertical is, you might make them a little bit more,
Pronounced?
pronounced, yeah.
Yeah, it's good feedback. Yeah,
No, it looks nice.
okay. Next. So this one gets a little harder to read. So this is Channing Philbrook. So on the left, you'll see there's actually two kiosks. And when you look at, and so the big one on the top, 70 by 42, that's at the little bridge when you first go down the hill before you wrap around the 180 and go to the parking lot. That's where that footbridge goes over the creek. You see a lot of people fishing. And so you'll see there's, again, it's a hard-to-read, outdated, kind of color faded map now that's about 30, it's a little smaller than what we're proposing, but it has, like I said, it has information about the fish. There's some useful information. There's the piece of history, the one on the flyer on the left, about all the mills down in that area. So there's a lot of useful information in that one. the park itself, so I don't know if you can see where the "you are here" is sort of right in the middle. That's where the main kiosk is, where that little footbridge is. Everything to the east of that, or to the right as you're looking at this, is the single trail that goes all the way out towards Parrington and Spring Lake Park. So it's really just sort of a single trail that follows along the creek. If you go the other way, if you go west, you're in the park for quite a while before you go under 441. That's actually where the park ends. But the trail continues all the way to Panorama Plaza behind Tops. So there's actually a separate kiosk, and that's not really truly a park, right? So the thought is that we'd split this into this trail map that shows but doesn't go all the way to Panorama Plaza, but we still want it to be readable. Likewise, doesn't go all the way to Spring Lake Park. The other end, it goes as far as the Parrington Town Line, Penfield-Parrington Town Line. The yellow trail that goes up on the right side, that's Ginny's Honey Creek Trail, aptly colored yellow, and that goes up to the Four Corners. So you may not have ever noticed, but there's a kiosk, that's the bottom kiosk there. That's on 5 Mile Line Road, just by the Flower Barn, by that little plaza there. And so that trail, again, it's not actually part of the park, but it follows that creek a little bit, down behind 441, all those businesses up on 441. So that's another way you can drop down into Channing Philbrick Park. And so this map would have to be scaled, one for one kiosk, one for the other kiosk. It's not a dense trail network, but you can see, how it would appear.
Hey, Don, are these maps going to be posted, or are they posted online?
So they would be, I think. I mean, they would be in some form, for sure.
I mean,
They're not done yet, right? So this is the first cut at them.
But that's the plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our plan is to post them on the website, have them available in an updated Wegmans passport that Don was referring to that shows all the different pathways, and there's different plaques out there that you can do rubbings to get a prize from the rec department and Wegmans. And then also, the main thing was what Don is talking about is updating the kiosk. So
Right.
the plan for doing all of this was, before we had a map here, we had a map there, and it just seemed outdated. The Trails Committee over the last 3 to 4 years has really been looking at how can we consolidate it so everything is consistent and the same, so we can post everything. And then the hopes would be to have QR codes in our
Right.
trail kiosks as well that would link to a
Oh,
phone.
excellent.
I
Yeah,
was
that
just
was
gonna
going to be
ask
my
about that.
question.
Yeah, so
thinking the
so
same
there'd be a
You're welcome,
QR
guys.
code.
Cheers. Sorry, I
I mean,
took your
sometimes
thunder.
people just take a picture, right? And then they
Right.
walk around. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there'd be a QR code too, would be part of the
Yeah,
plan,
that's
for
excellent.
sure. Once there's something to link to.
Right, yeah, perfect.
So yeah, so again, this is the first pass. There's some cleanup things that we're going to do.
And I don't want to put pressure on Don and this committee to not
Oh.
give feedback, but hopefully by spring, we can have all this stuff printed and out there. I know you've done a lot of work behind it, but that's the hope. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but
Yeah, well.
would be nice.
All we can do
Just
is
saying it.
provide, we're not the printers.
From a
so-
recreation standpoint.
Yeah, there are maps online on the recreation website. They're just not the updated ones right now.
Right.
Oh,
So
okay.
there is some up there right now.
Yeah. And so again, so this is the Panorama Plaza, Panorama Valley. It's also called Irondequoit Creek, Panorama Plaza. There's a few different names. But this, again, this shows the whole trail from that parking lot at the east side or right end of this, all the way through. So there's really no network other than there's little trails along the creek within the park. So this one's pretty simple. But again, go back one
sorry.
second, if you could. All right, so if you could look at the kiosk today, that same thing, there's information about the fish in the creek. This one has even more detailed information about the mills and the different things that you can find, along Irondequoit Creek through that section. So there's some pretty useful information that we'd want to maintain.
What's going up in front of Home Depot? Is that an old creek?
Oh, in front, I mean across the road?
Yeah, across the front of Home
Yeah, so that's,
Depot.
I think that used to be a wetland in there. It's not standing water like that looks. I'm not sure how that was generated, actually. That caught my eye too, Mike. And I think that that's behind that store that used to be there. like where the Popeyes is, right before the bridge. And they used to park used, new cars back there from the car dealership and stuff. So I don't know. Yeah. Okay, Harris Whalen. So this one I think we're going to do a little work on. There's 2 kiosks. There's one up where the water tower parking lot is. That's the one on the left. And then there's also there's a little parking lot off Route 250. So they're different sizes, not terribly different. But the trail network, and that's kind of what we inherited, there's all those different colors, and all those little stubs all have individual names and things. And they're pretty short. And you can, if you've ever been up in there, you can kind of see them almost from anywhere you stand. And so I think that's overly complicated and confusing. And so, we took at our last Trails Committee meeting the action to propose an update to how these trails are. But one of the issues is a lot of those colors are painted on trees. Right, and so then you try to paint over them, or you put blazes over them. So you'll see when we get to our proposal, we're talking about not painting trees, but using little plaques that you can take off if you make changes in the future. So this one, a little work in progress, but the trail network is accurate. The depiction is accurate. We just want to make it a little easier to follow. Sherwood Fields. So that's the one we saw at the very beginning. I think we're going to change from one big Sherwood Fields network, because some of those trails are in woods and they wind around a lot, twists and turns, and I know people get disoriented in there a little bit. So I think we're going to propose a change to how that is laid out, add some different colored trails. There's 3 secondary trails on there, and then this one, the thing that's all in red is wide crushed stone. Hard to get lost, but easy to get disoriented. So I think we're going to try to clean that one up a little bit to be a little easier, and also put some signage on the trails themselves at junctions, and blaze them so people will know hopefully know where they are. But this one, I'm sorry, go back. I keep baiting you into
I wait for the pauses.
I know. So there's actually, it looks like one big kiosk, but they're really 2 separate kiosks right next to each other. So kind of the proposal, the 24 by 36, is about the size of the one on the left, or either side, the same both sides, right? So there's really sort of 2 trail maps there that are just hard to read and sun faded. So I think we'd replace one of those with this, and then there'd be a lot of room on this one to put in some. And there's a lot of wildlife in there, a lot of bird watching, so I think, there's an opportunity to put some good information there.
When was the last time these were printed? How old are the maps? would
That
you
I
say?
couldn't tell you. Tim might have an idea, but
Probably
Got no idea.
more than 5.
Okay, because I know now that they have paper that's UV resistant with the ink and stuff like that would be
Yeah.
my recommendation, because it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about that. What are we doing to keep the new maps from getting sun faded?
yeah, I mean, there are better tools and better techniques to plan for being, weather resistant
sun,
and
yeah.
sun resistant. They are all behind plexiglass, so I know they get pretty hot in there, and all weather and et cetera, so. But I'm not the materials guy, so,
Stuff we can look into for sure.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then last is Veterans Memorial Park. And so that's the kiosk today. It's not real big for the size of the park, and it's in a little bit of an awkward location. If you look in the "You Are Here," it's kind of back by that little pond. So really all from the Trails Committee that we're concerned with is what's in green. It's called the Nature Trail. So from, behind that pond or behind the War Memorial, behind the amphitheater, there's some trails back there behind the, sort of behind the ball fields. And it's pretty short, but it's pretty treed, and it is easy to get a little mixed up. They're currently blazed white, and I think we'll probably leave it. We'll change, I don't think Matt knew that when he did this. So we'd leave those the same and not try to split it up into a lot of little different trails, just put little "You Are Here" signs, probably. But the kiosk, the trail map shows everything. It shows all the sidewalks, all the ball fields, all that. I suppose there could be a discussion as to whether you'd want a separate one for just the nature trail or leave it like this. Given the size of the kiosk, it's kind of dense.
I was
right?
just saying to Tim, I do think this big overhaul of our trail maps, we could talk to Little League as well, and then maybe not necessarily have a kiosk, but have some spots down there where we post the signage, and then we can define what the names of the fields are as well. So it not only lets people know what the whole park looks like,
Right.
but helps guide people, because I know they're always pointing people in different directions to find the different fields. So we can work with them to maybe have some spots for them to display it.
And that is also one of the last kiosks on our list to get replaced. So that one definitely needs an updating.
Okay.
We've been trying to get somebody to do it for a while,
Yeah.
a scout. But yeah, that kiosk can definitely need some updating, and a larger one would be
This would be a
sufficient.
good place to have a bigger one.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And add some there in the park, too.
Yep. Yeah, and you could have more than one here, too, to highlight different areas of the park, too. It's pretty expansive space. Okay. And then, for the on-trail markers, what we're proposing, the left, that's what they do actually at Whiting Road in Webster. They have these little cedar planks that have the names of the trails, and then they paint them that color. And, they don't put too many of them. They're mostly just at trailheads and at junctions. But they're pretty clear and easy to read. And what they tell me is they've been up, the first ones went up 20 years ago, and the cedar has held up. Some of the posts in the really wet areas have been replaced. The planks have held up, so the cedar is a good thing. That's an example of the kind of blaze that we are proposing, so you can handle corners. Generally, they're straight, right? You can buy bundles of 100. They're just aluminum, so they hold up to the weather. Just tack them up. Don't hurt the trees. And then on the right is what we call "You Are Here" signs. They're actually pretty small. You can see one on the post on the one on the left. And it's really the trail map with distances, and you make one, and you figure out how many places you feel you could use them. And then each one is individual because it has a little "You Are Here" sticker. But it just helps, again, you don't want to overdo it, but it helps people. Now, that's a pretty dense trail network, and so they have a lot of them. Our trail networks in these parks is not very dense, and so you wouldn't need many of them. Some parks you wouldn't need any. But I think those are very useful on the trail for anyone who's ever hiked it and encountered those. They're very helpful. So those are our proposals. We have to cost all this out. We've got to count once we kind of agree on the trails and the colors. It's not that you need to do the count. You don't need the colors, but so yeah, we're working on all that.
Looks great.
Okay, one more. And then we'd apply some guidance, right? Sign everywhere, sign. It's supposed to be nature hikes, so we'll try to use good judicious placement. I use that word a few times, I think, judicious decision-making on that. But yeah, we'll apply common sense and try to do it right. Okay, and with that, we get to our last park, which is Shadow Pines. So we have a Shadow Pines North and a Shadow Pines South. Shadow Pines South right now, there's an effort we've talked about in here before, the shared use trail project. So that's really, coming together. So I think we're a little premature. Doing the trail network for Shadow Pines South should be part of that shared use trail project. Shadow Pines North, we put together this just shows everything in red is the crushed stone or cart paths that exist today. And the green, partially what's mowed, it's not everything. So those are kind of the paths that we have today. And that's, there's on the north side, there's really 3 kiosks. One is kind of dedicated to the disc golf. One, I think, is inside the fence where they're building the Clark House Lodge. I think that'll be dedicated to the history of the Clark House in that area.
And that's
then
for
there's
cross-country too, not to cut in. The Eagle Scout that made that, it has ski racks on
Ski
it. It
racks and
has
a
a little
bench.
bench,
Right,
so it's for
it's built
cross-country
two-sided.
runners and then cross-country skiers as well.
Yeah, so two-sided, so we could do that, one on each side. And then this is the primary one, and again, right now, there's no trail map at all. And I think we're going to transition now to Marina, who's our Girl Scout working on a gold project, and talking about formalizing, I think, the Shadow Pines North Trail Network. Is that a good
Yeah.
characterization?
Yes, so, hello, I'm Marina. I'm a 10th grader at Penfield High School, and I've been a Girl Scout since kindergarten. Some background, a couple years ago, I worked on my Silver Ward, which involved designing, building, and installing birdhouses for birds on the south side of Shadow Pines. So this is my Gold Award, which is similar to the Eagle Scout, and I would like to create an interactive mapping tool of the north side of Shadow Pines Park trails to be accessible by all Penfield residents. The trails will be coexistent with the disc golf course, the pickleball courts, the playground, and like the soon-coming Clark House. My committee members to date, Mr. Erkfitz, Mr. Masterton, Mr. Insaldi, and Mr. Princing. As the project continues, we'll be meeting with more committee members, and more members will be added. I've met with many of the committee and have investigated the trails. Last time I walked the trails was in the fall, and like as you can see on that map, they kind of like get intertwined with each other. So that's kind of part of the inspiration for what I'd like to do and make the trails more obvious and clear. By the end of my project, I plan to have the updated map with labeled trails, similar to and with trail markers similar to the ones that were just showed, like the ones that are at the Whiting Nature Preserve, because we like the way those are really obvious and clear. I'd also have recommendations for the best methods to join the trails together, including a QR code that links the GIS map for the trail system, which will be like in the kiosks and whatever. Also, an updated map to add to the passport book. And the photo of the disc golf, or the map of
Yep.
the disc golf.
The disc golf is there.
It's a little bit confusing when you look at it, but it's kind of the part of the inspiration for my maps because, like as you can see the beginnings and the endings of all of the disc golf holes, and they are also color coded, and that's what I'd like to have for the map that I provide, so that way it's clear and obvious for where the trails are. With the weather getting better and snow melting, I'll spend more time outside on the trails and being able to see them and to figure out like where it gets wet and like where you need the different materials for the different paths. So it's still a work in progress, but it's basically what I have so far. So thank you.
Yeah. So one thing that I know Marina's looking at too, when we go back and look at the current trail map that we look at here, these are all of the current golf cart paths. So they're paved, through the process of the shared use trails project, working with a trail designer for the concept plans, looking at different types of trail materials that we could put down. We do know that there is at some point an end of life to these golf cart paths, and it's made for a golf cart, or a golf course, excuse me, so they end in random places where there was golf holes and golf tee boxes. So projects like these, it's not only looking at what the current paths are, but what makes sense with all the different things in there. So kudos to Marina for approaching the town with this great idea, and it kind of just goes in line with the kiosk information, with the mapping. But the map that you see here is the current. We're hoping to have more general trails, whether it's footpaths or other places. It may stay the same with cart paths. It might just be stone dust trails and things like that. So this project also kind of morphed from the south side Shadow Pines trail use, where we really learned a lot through the process working with Adam from Further Trail Services on what's the best, trails for future, how to design them and how to work them. So this is kind of the start of that project, and as a sophomore in high school, and most Eagle Scouts and Gold Scouts get until their senior year, she is already starting as a sophomore, so kudos to her and all her initiative.
Thank you.
Tim, a couple of, at least especially along along Wayland, that path is really buckled in a few spots pretty bad. Is this already time to start taking some sections out?
Yeah, so we've monitored them when we go out mowing. We see if there's any like bad tripping hazards and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
obviously, wintertime, they
Yeah.
buckle. It's the freeze thaw.
Right.
So when they get to the point where they start breaking down, huge tripping hazards, that's when we'll start talking about.
Yeah, I think a couple of them are getting pretty
Yeah.
close. A couple sections, right?
Any questions or comments for Marina?
Thank you for all your work.
No,
We appreciate
thank
it.
you,
Can't wait
Marina.
to see what
It looks
final
great.
design looks like.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set?
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the active transportation plan.
Yeah, so there was an open house held by the contractor. So for anyone who's not familiar with the active transportation plan, the town board hired a contractor to look at all of the transportation. So active transportation is really non-motorized. So you think, bikes and hikes mostly. And looking at safety is, I think, probably the primary aspect of that. How can you bike or hike safely on town roads? But sort of one of the big areas of interest, I think, from the Parks and Rec, when we did the master plan, again, that would be a good thing to look at. We talked about connectivity, so that would be off-road connections between neighborhoods and points of interest. And, that certainly feeds the active transportation approach to things. And so one of the things that we wanted, we met with that contractor in the fall as a stakeholder and suggested some areas that we were aware of and some things that they could look at. And was happy to see they had poster boards up, and they accounted for some of the connectivity plans that we had talked about that exist in the master plan. We'd like to see those adopted in the active transportation plan, and then we might be able to push them forward and apply for grants or funding from the board or whatever. So I think it looked like they were doing a really good job. There was a lot of information on safety and bike lanes. Bike corridors is another term that, they use, just safety and, off-road. And so I think looks like they're on a really good path. I think they're expecting their first draft in maybe late March or April of that plan. So it was a good, and they had the poster boards with, ability to comment and all, and there were a lot of people commenting, so good progress.
Did they also, Linda, present to the board, if I believe, right, town board?
No, the.
It was just the active transportation board, okay.
The majority of that work has gone through the Transportation Committee. There's stuff on the website as well that people can go check out. I believe this was the first kind of presentation to show the feedback, so there is still portions where feedback can be provided. Just check out the website if you're interested in more of that stuff.
Okay, great. Anything else to add on to that? Anybody else? Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Browncroft project connectivity update. So myself and a couple other stakeholders met with Mark, an engineer, and so we got some information from the DOT. So there's some good things happening. Doesn't really affect us on what our planning side is, but it really kind of goes back to acquisition plan and connectivity. So there's a couple, do you have some of those slides? Did you put those in there, presentation?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
No big deal.
I'm sorry about that.
So heading up a Browncroft towards the city, right before the apartments, the road really narrows and there's kind of a pinch point. So they're going to actually have like a 6-foot shoulder where there is no shoulder now for bikes. So, and then also when you get up towards the top heading west to east, there's going to be a sidewalk going there at the DOT. So not
On
perfect.
the north side?
Yeah,
I think
basic,
there's one on the south side now, I think.
yeah, basically on the same side as south side, on cams.
Yeah.
When you get to top.
Okay.
So they're going to do all that kind of stuff, so, and they're also going to put rumble strips on the sides of the road, so there's not going to be a dedicated biking lane, but at least if your car is going off of it and there is somebody, you'll have, better chance to avoid them, I guess.
So
So,
I think that was originally a resurfacing project.
Correct.
So it sounds like they've maybe expanded the scope. I
Yes.
know there was a lot of feedback requesting a lot of these, mostly
Right.
safety concerns for bikes.
right, we did not get everything we wanted, but we definitely got a lot more than what they were anticipating, so that feedback, especially early in the process and often, has really helped out, so, if there are other opportunities like that, please be involved to try to get that stuff
Now
done.
there's an Empire Road project.
That's the
coming
next one.
up. Now would be a good time to get it.
How far down into the valley does the sidewalk and the expanded shoulder go?
The sidewalk is, I want to say, from Creek all the way just to the top of the hill if you're heading towards the city.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think it's going to be a
it's big-
7-foot
big part.
sidewalk, yeah.
Okay. Oh.
And I think pretty much the shoulder is going to be 6 to 7 feet on both sides. Not a dedicated banking lane, but, much better than what it is currently.
Do you know when they're starting?
I think they were supposed to start site work and some utility stuff this year. It won't be done till next year, I believe.
Yeah, it's going to be a 2-year project, for
They're
sure.
pretty disruptive, I assume.
Yeah.
Very.
Oh, I gotta change how I go to work.
You and a lot of other people, so maybe when you go to work, too.
I can share those slides. There was just, because that deck was like 140 pages, so I just highlighted 3 of them, and you'll see what I was talking about. No, they're no big deal. Okay, so the next item is Parks update.
So Parks update, the crew has been working on a lot of our stone parking lots over the wintertime. It takes a beating. We've been putting fresh stone on a lot of the potholes down at LaSalle's Landing, Greenwood, and other stone parking lots that we have. And then speaking of LaSalle's, they are starting the LaSalle's conversation project. You'll see equipment down there if you travel that way. They're starting, CMI starting their heliocoil project to shore up for the base of that. So they're going to be starting that project.
Tim, I'm sorry, is that also, there was a pavilion, right?
Yes, it's a conversation, which would be.
Oh, conversation is
Yeah,
pavilion.
that's what,
Okay,
instead of saying restroom or, so it's, yeah,
now I got it.
restrooms and then half of, it's kind of, it's going to be similar to the Rofus, where on the back end, it's going to be picnic tables and stuff like that on the water's side.
Got it.
And then a lot of other crew has been helping out the facilities with the lighting project around town, replacing a lot of the old lights in the community center, library, sewer building, and the MAC building with LED lights. So they've been helping out facilities with that. And then just moving on to the athletic fields and courts updates. As always, we try to open them up by April 15th. That's the end of our snow season, so we can get all our snow stuff done, all the sod repaired, all the stakes picked up. But we do keep an eye on the weather, so if we have unseasonably warm weather at a consistent rate, that's when we try to open them up sooner.
And currently, we put this on here for a reason in March. It's beautiful outside today, so it's wonderful, and we want people to be as active as possible. But when it comes to grass fields like the diamonds behind us, our athletic fields, if it's too wet, we understand you want to get out and play. But if you damage it early in the season, it's going to have to be offline, and damages go forward. So we always ask, please wait for the town. We will announce it and put it out on social media. We're in constant contact with all of our community sports groups because they're always emailing, asking when we can get out. But Tim and his crew does a wonderful job. We do kind of hold back, especially in April, just to make sure that the fields are ready for play, and the majority of them, because once they open up, people go out there and use them is what we want. But we just have to make sure that there's not a lot of damages to it. And then on the other side of that, for the athletic courts, all 10 pickleball courts at Shadow Pines are open. So thank you to Tim and his team. I know Over the weekend, there was a lot of play, and today and potentially tomorrow. So we had 6 courts open over the winter season, and Tim and his team, because they monitored the weather and they knew there'd be a lot of use, went out, opened those other 4 at Shadow Pines. And then behind us at Veterans Memorial, we had 2 courts that are tennis open all winter long. Those remain open. Then we'll go in mid-April and look at Harris Whalen and the rest of the parks at Greenwood as well. So lights for those, for Harris Whalen and for Veterans Memorial. We'll not plan on going on until all of the nets are open at all the courts, and then our security team will start doing that. Again, mid-April, weather pending, so just be aware of all that stuff.
Question about the tennis courts. I think last year we talked about is there one being resurfaced this year?
So right now, as far as budget-wise, we have money set aside for resurfacing the basketball courts at Harris Whalen.
Okay.
I have to do some more digging on to see if we had money rolled over to redo the ones here at Veterans.
Okay. I just know we talked about
But
that.
they
I couldn't
did
remember.
Greenwood Park last
That's right.
But
we did.
Greenwood was done
Greenwood
last
was done
year.
last year. Okay.
The basketball courts are definitely on the agenda for this year, and then we'll have to reassess what our budget is for the tennis court, or the tennis courts and the basketball courts here at
Okay.
Veterans.
Thank you.
How about the barn? Want to comment on that? People are,
We are currently sorting through the timbers that are, we're picking through those, inspecting them and storing them. If you go around the corner there, you see the Verdi container, labeling them, storing all the best beams that we can.
So there are some that can be saved or
Yeah.
reused then?
Yep.
Awesome.
Thoughts on reusing them? Any idea?
I know there was the Shadow Pines Barn Committee, all that, so right now, we're just saving the good ones and storing them for later use and a later decision.
Kiosks.
Right?
I know Supervisor Barry is interested in reestablishing that barn committee to look at options of what we could do, how we can use that.
Cool.
So hopefully in the near future. we'll hear more.
What happens with that spot? Looks like there was some kind of pad there or foundation. Is that just going to be ripped up and?
That.
So right now, there was a basement to the barn, there's a hole there.
Oh, okay.
So right now, it's just an asphalt pad. We would take out the asphalt and just grade it out so it's safe. So then we would take away the fence and then go from there.
Okay.
Reseed it at this point.
No plans to build anything on top of
No
there?
plan, I mean, unless
No, not at this point.
not at this point, no.
Okay.
Okay. Shadow Pines Property Shared Trail update?
Yeah, it's a great segue, looking at the barn on the south side. So I reported last meeting for Parks and Rec Advisory Committee that we received 3 RFPs for the next set of construction engineering designs, not going to construction. But that's the next step based on the recommendations from Adam Reitz from Further Trail Services with the concept plans. We have interviewed 1 out of the 3 RFP firms, and we have the remaining 2 at the end of this week. We'll gather as a staff after the interviews and make recommendations and have a discussion with the town board either later this month or next month, just on the potential of moving forward with those design plans. So moving forward, and happy that we got 3 RFPs, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay. So the next item is the Penfield Recs update.
Yep. So I'll keep it pretty short. We had our summer camp registration open on March 4th, Wednesday at 10 a.m. And just can't thank this committee enough for all of your feedback, our community for all of our feedback, with our servers going, basically to a halt and not providing great customer service last year in 2025 when we moved it to March. This year, our focus was on making sure that the software was up to speed, and thankfully, we had our servers moved to a hosted migration from Vermont Systems, and we also updated our credit card processing system. So did all these different changes to, in the end, make sure that that system worked. So I'm happy to report that we did not have major issues. We certainly, it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah, Julie's not shooting daggers at you.
No,
So
I thought it
she's
was
happy.
great. I had no issues. Listen, my kids are signed up with it. No, but I did hear a little bit of feedback from other people, and they similarly said that it was much better than last year, and
Yep.
that they didn't really have a whole lot of issues with the platform at all. So I think it was much better.
Yes, thank you. And the way that it worked this year was the Vermont Systems had a specific IT manager watching our system, studying to see when and if they needed to put in a virtual waiting room. They weren't sure if they were going to do it. They were kind of waiting and seeing based on the transactions that we did last year. So it opened at 10 a.m. and I believe 10 minutes. So at 9:50, they enacted the virtual waiting room because I think they said over 600 users went onto the site at that point, and that was 10 minutes prior to 10. And the way that the virtual waiting room worked was it popped up, basically said, hey, you're in this virtual waiting room, you'll be sent to the site as soon as it opens up, and there was a bar at the bottom that had this little active runner moving, and then once it got to the end, you know that you went in. So from the recreation side of it, I was sitting there on my phone in the waiting list because this was something that only in the last couple months we had heard was an opportunity to do. We hadn't actually seen it, so I was seeing it live with everyone else, and but it went smooth. We actually got more emails and phone conversations and feedback of the positive side of the virtual waiting room. So we're already talking about doing that next year, coming up with a how-to to send out to all of our users and have on our website now that we know that this software works. But I just want to report on some of the numbers. At our Penfield Community Center site, we have 175 enrollments per week for 7 weeks, which is where we were last year. That filled, even with the virtual waiting room, within 5 minutes.
Yep.
So that's, I don't want to do my math, but 7 weeks, 175 kids, that filled 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
I
Wonderful
mean,
thing.
it's hilarious. I was texting people, I was like, this is like,
Yep.
we should all get together, it's like a fantasy football draft. I was scared to touch anything, I was like, okay, I'm in the virtual line, don't breathe, don't move.
I was
Don't
on my phone as
reload.
well, going, oh man, I hope this virtual waiting room thing cracks up to me. But that went smooth. Our Scribner Road site that has 125 per week for 6 weeks, that was filled in 20 minutes. And then our Pee Wee program, usually the mornings fill up right away. That filled, I think, within a half an hour. And then there, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think there may be still some weeks that have afternoon openings, but those will go fast because there's 25 per AM and per PM. So as a total, that's 325, if my Penfield High School math is correct, per week for 6 weeks, and then an extra week of 175. So we have waiting lists still that are in the 50s, some are in the 80s to 100s. We are continually to hire more staff to open up our Harris Whalen site, which potentially could be anywhere from 40 to 50 additional enrollments. But again, thankfully, our software, especially internally for our staff, having to go through wait lists night and day compared to last year. So great changes. I can't thank Dave from IT department here, Dave Renner, Sarah Reynolds from finance working with us for the last year really to get all these things in place. So if there is feedback out there still from participants, please communicate it to us, but we have a little less than 4 months to be able to try and get more staff for those wait lists, which I don't want to make any promises, but we're doing very well on hiring staff at the moment, and we have a lot of returning staff, so good things.
If
Any
you hired more
questions or-
staff, where would you put the camps? Where's the physical space?
So Harris Whalen Lodge has been our thought and option. We do use it for recreation programming over the summer. So we have dance classes that go over there. That was ever since COVID. We really started to use Harris Whalen and Dolomite pretty much Monday through Thursday, if not Monday through Friday, which we understand ties up
So they were
people that
blocked
want to
off
use the
from
lodge,
people,
but
right.
we
Right.
thought we have a greater need for facility space going back to a rec center to offer these programs. So That's our hope, is Harris Whalen. That would be that 40 to 50 enrollment for staff there. But, as we're talking about future needs
Right.
for the community, this is something that continuously pops up. When we looked at a new rec center in our Parks and Rec master plan, the hopes would be to have larger summer camp. We currently don't have an after-school program. We could offer an after-school program. Childcare, we understand it's a need. We just don't currently have the facility to do those sorts of things. So when you look at the revenue side of things too, I think it was on day one, $280,000 in revenue that came in just for summer camp. So that's a great number. If those numbers only increase from a revenue side, from an enrollment side, all those things help out with future facilities and plans for the rec department. So again, can't thank enough. It's not perfect, but we made some positive changes this year to make it better for external and internal
Fabulous.
Yeah,
customers.
Can I ask, is the enrollment, the current full enrollment at Scribner and PCC, that's the max you can fit in those buildings?
We've upped it over the last couple of years, knowing that our wait lists were the wait lists there.
But in other words, there's not really room to let, I feel like in years past, we've talked about, like, you opened it for a certain number because you didn't yet have the staff
Yep.
or whatever, but the 175 at PCC is really max
Yep.
capacity for the building.
All the numbers that I just mentioned was where we were at when we had camp last year.
Okay.
Typically in previous years, yes, based on staffing, when we used to be in December, we would maybe know if half the staff were coming back. So we
Right.
had to really scale it low. Since we moved to March, that was the hope that we'd have more staff hired. Last year, certainly the system didn't help, but this year we were confident with the amount of returning staff to be able to offer those numbers.
Okay.
And with at least the applications that we received. So fingers crossed we can add another site this year and then expand into the future.
So when is the last date that you're looking to hire staff? I mean, I've seen it all over the town, I've shared it, so,
We have hired staff in July.
okay, so
We
sign
will
up.
take applications. Obviously, we interview and we go through the process with background screenings and all that stuff. But please, we encourage them as soon as possible, but keep them coming in, because at this point, we're trying to add as much as possible with whatever facilities we can get into.
Great, great.
And then the other part is just Town of Penfield events. We're working on booking bands for summer concerts. Independence Day with this year's 250th celebration for the country. We're working on special events with our Independence Day event, which will be held for our fireworks and parade on Saturday, June 27th. But with the 250th, we are planning various different programs and events leading up to July 4th, hoping to have 1 to 2, if not 3 to 4 per day, working with all the various departments throughout town. So an exciting year to celebrate our country, and the towns will have more details spread out this spring with final details on dates and programs and things that we're doing for Independence Day.
For the parade, do you have a time? And then fireworks is usually like 10-ish,
Parade's 10, and then fireworks are 10 p.m.
10 and 10.
And that event starts at 6 p.m. with music, food vendors, activities for kids, stuff like that.
Okay, great. We have no other business at this point, and then we just have the held items, but Don kind of pretty much covered that, so I think we're all set with that. And then the old business, Thousand Acre Swamp and Ross Fuss Connection, no real updates there, correct?
I do not have an update from Nature Conservancy.
Okay. And we have no new business. So the last thing is Andrew or Tim, any feedback? Linda?
Nope. Nope. Again, just can't stress going out to take the community survey for the Penfield Forward Tomorrow's Town Spaces, provide as much feedback as possible, and help us with those decisions in the future.
Okay. Our next meeting is April 14th, 6 o'clock, Penfield Town Hall. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.